What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you guys another video. Today I'm bringing you guys a video on Lupinranger versus Patoranger, episode 35, and this episode is called Good People, Bad People. And the episode overall was okay. It did introduce something new, which is cool. And next week we'll also introduce another thing that's new, so that's good. All these things have to do with Lupin Magnum, because Lupin Magnum is like the big ticket, important item right now that's pretty significant. But the story was okay as well. It was interesting, and it had some focus towards Kagori, which is interesting to see because Kagori is a character that we typically don't get a lot of attention towards, even though he seems to be fairly important. And we're also very late into the season. I mean, we're just about 3/4 of the way through Lupinranger versus Patoranger. And speaking of which, we'll be discussing the trademark which finally got revealed for the next season in another video that should be coming out probably directly after this one. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, let's get started with this episode. The episode basically begins with us seeing that there's this monster, but first of all, there's actually, Kagori is drinking an espresso. He's going to be doing some research, and what happens is that there's this monster known as Drion, and Drion has the ability, using his Lupin collection item, to make people separate into their halves, so that there's the main part of their existence, there's their good half, and there's their bad half. And what happens is that there's these three parts, and the thing is that if they're not put together within, I think it's like a 12-hour or 6-hour period, I think it was, then they actually, then the main body won't exist anymore, and that will create, and it just will lead to either the two halves or just nothing existing. So that's pretty essential. What happens is that eventually, Kairi tries to fight against this monster, and what happens is that eventually the Patorangers arrive on the scene, and they manage to do a attack that leads to Drion's attack, which would have hit Kairi and split his personalities apart, actually hitting Kagori, and Kagori ends up having to have his personality split. And there's several other people in the area that are suffering from the same things. Kairi tries to bring back Kagori to the juror, and the Patorangers try to deal with the other people. So that's worth noting. When they are back at juror, they notice that the other two Kagoris are actually gone, and they need to go and look and locate them. And so they begin to search so that they could find the other Kagoris. At the same time, we do see Degranio at one point and Destra talking, as well as Goche, about how good Drion's doing with his mission, and if he continues to do well, eventually he'll go up and maybe he'll get lucky. So that's all good, and they're trying to figure out where Drion is. Noelle tries to go and investigate things, speak to the Power Rangers, and figure out more information. They're still having a hard time. The Patorangers are dealing with finding people's other halves, but what we do end up seeing is that eventually Umika and Toma end up finding the good half of Kagori. This good half actually helps a woman cross the street, and also helps rescue a boy that would have gotten hit by a car, but also Umika and Toma help as well. So eventually they decide, since this form is all about helping, why don't we bring him back so that way he can help us by staying in one place. And so we actually have the good half and the main half of Kagori. The bad half is still missing. So what happens is that Kairi goes in search of the bad half. In the meantime, what we do see is that the Power Rangers are putting back together people, which is nice to see. And eventually, what does end up happening is that Kairi manages to find the bad half, which is this kind of, street biker kind of character that has some attitude, but he's an older gentleman, so he doesn't really have like the strength or power to really do anything past just kind of coming across a certain way, and he looks really goofy, honestly. Like, he doesn't seem threatening per se. He acts a certain way, which is interesting. But as far as things go, what we do end up seeing is that eventually, when they bring back the bad half, the original half had actually disappeared, and there's a moment where we see this guy that enters a building, and what happens is that they notice that the good half and the bad half are still there, but the main half is missing. So what happens is that Kyrie and the others end up meeting up at this kind of factory, and they end up finding this guy that was being attacked, was going to be attacked by the Ganglers and Drion. But what happens is that when Drion tries to use his ability on this guy, he doesn't separate, and it's pretty obvious as to why that is. And when they rescue this guy, the Lupinrangers, they actually retreat to a specific location, and it's revealed that underneath the face was actually the original half of Kagori. And the thing is that Kagori has felt guilty for what he's been doing and how he's been treating the Lupinrangers and everything like that, and why he came to the conclusion of choosing them and all that stuff. So it is an interesting thing to see. What we do end up seeing as well is that the the Lupinrangers continue to fight. Eventually, they use all sorts of different attacks. We don't really see the Kaito boost or anything like that. But they do end up fighting for a while, and eventually they manage to use the big strike, which is cool. And they manage to defeat Drion, and then what happens is that it's also revealed what the Lupin collection item is in the inside, which is actually based off of the Kakuranger's changer. So that's kind of cool. It actually makes a lot of sense because they're ninjas and they're making clones and all that, which makes a lot of sense. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. So that's very fitting. And anyway, what does end up happening is that following this, the Ganglers retreat rather than actually turning bigger right away. And what happens is that Kyrie summons Lupin Magnum, and Lupin Magnum actually takes the form of its robot form, which is pretty cool. So we actually get to see Lupin Magnum in its robot form, which is awesome. The music is cool, the fight scenes are cool, it's really great stuff. We do eventually see it fighting alongside Lupin Kaiser, which is cool, and they actually get to use the gun mode of it in Lupin Kaiser as well as a weapon, which is very, very nice. And we see that as they end up battling against the Gangler, which they managed to defeat fairly easily. And then following all of that, the Patorangers are kind of jealous of the whole situation and just kind of interested by it. But eventually, back at the Juror, they end up putting back together the three Kagoris. And what happens is that Kagori is also injured, and so what happens is that Umika wants to help put on a bandage on his arm, and Toma wants to make him food, and basically Kagori realizes that they really do care for him and they want him to be good and in good shape and everything like that. And Noelle also encourages this, and Kyrie as well. So all this is good stuff is happening. And yeah, as far as the preview goes, the preview is going to have some focus on it looks like Kachiro and also Sequoia, which is interesting. And also we are going to see the introduction to Lupin Magnum Superior, which is the combination that uses the robot mode of Lupin Magnum, but it has the arms swapped with the yellow and the blue dial fighters, so that's pretty cool. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that. As far as whether or not there will be any other forms of Lupin Magnum Superior, probably not, because that's the only one that really is advertised. But if they decide to, that would be interesting to see. I mean, again, it's always a possibility. It's just not something that's actually being discussed as of now. And it does look like the Patorangers will be fighting alongside Lupin Magnum Lupin Magnum next episode. So that will be cool to see, because we saw Lupin Kaiser. This next episode looks like Pat Kaiser will be fighting alongside Lupin Magnum. So that will be cool to see. I'm definitely looking forward to that. I am going to be curious to see how things will develop out. And yeah, things are looking good. Soon enough, we should be getting Lupin X, like Super Lupin X happening, which is the super mode for Lupin X. Again, that should be happening very soon, so just keep it in mind. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where things will go from here. Again, we are just about 3/4 of the way through the show, so we're definitely getting into the later story territory. There will be new striker forms coming very soon, which means that there will be more mechas available, so keep that in mind as well. And please roll, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I am Crazy Samurai 71. I know this video was much shorter just because there was not as much to talk about this episode. It was a fairly straightforward plot, and and just in general, I'm waiting for things to just change up, but I do want to discuss, and I will be discussing this in the next video, what I know and what I'm thinking about the trademark that was revealed for the 2019 series of Super Sentai, which we now actually have officially, which is super cool. So keep that in mind, and definitely look into that. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy 771, and goodbye, guys.